Welcome into another episode of the Drum Candy Podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, the Chief Creative Officer for Drum Factory Direct. This week's episode is 10 Reasons to Love Bill Stewart. Bill Stewart is one of the most influential and prolific modern jazz drummers of the past 30 years. He was born in 1966 in Des Moines, Iowa. After first attending the University of Northern Iowa, Bill eventually transferred over to William Patterson University in New Jersey. While at William Patterson, Bill played in ensembles that were directed by the legendary bassist Rufus Reid, and he studied drums with Elliot Zigman and Horace Arnold, and composition with vibraphonist Dave Samuels. Bill Stewart started making recordings around 1990, and it wasn't long after he moved to New York, around that time, that he hooked up with guitarist John Scofield and joined his band, and also formed his trio with Peter Bernstein on guitar and Larry Goldings on organ. And for the past 35 years, Bill Stewart has been a prolific composer, band leader, and sideman, performing with the who's who of modern jazz. And in this episode, I've got Thomas Wendt and David Throckmorton here, and we are sharing our personal 10 favorite picks from Bill's vast discography. If you're not familiar with Bill Stewart, there's a lot of incredible music here, so let's get going. 10 Reasons to Love Bill Stewart. All right, 10 Reasons to Love Bill Stewart. The drummer that got me into straight ahead jazz, honestly.
Really?
Because I bought a John Scofield album thinking it was going to be Dennis Chambers, and it was Bill Stewart.
I didn't know that about you.
Oh, it was Things We Do. Is that the record?
What We Do.
What We Do.
That's the second record with Bill.
Yeah.
There was one before that.
That was the one. I got that, and I was like, oh, this is not Dennis Chambers.
Yeah.
But it's pretty freaking cool. So I'm excited to go through this stuff, because some of these early records I did not know.
There was a transition though between that Sco period with like Omar and Dennis and Steve Jordan before that, like the fusiony stuff.
Oh, that was in the middle. Or
well, I mean that was all that funkier stuff was earlier.
Right.
And then he made some records, like he made a record with Terry Lynn and Johnny Vodakovich. Then he made a record with Jack, a straight ahead record. The same kind of band with Lovano and Scofield. And then the next record was the record with Bill, the first one called Meant to Be.
Right. I got that one later.
Yeah. Anyway, then the next record was like a Joey Barron record, and then the next record was another What We Do.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was like a few of those type of records out.
All right. Anybody y'all familiar with Bill Stewart at all? A little bit? Not at all? I don't know how to describe him other than the cleanest jazz drummer I can think of. Left foot. I learned about left foot stuff from him.
And he's super articulate.
Super articulate. And he kind of came out of the box sounding like himself.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, the earlier records, when you hear him, like he is sort of,
Fully formed.
Yeah, kind of.
I heard stories about him at William Patterson College, just practicing all day, all night.
Makes sense.
And the one thing I picked up from him when he mentioned some interview was he would turn his metronome on, play for a while, turn the metronome off, play for an hour, and then turn the metronome back on to see if he was still at the same BPM.
That's a real good way to make yourself feel bad most of the time. at least for most of us.
So let's dive in. So we got these in chronological from our picks. It's not necessarily his first recording, but Tom, you picked Lee Konitz. Konitz or Konitz?
Konitz.
Konitz.
That's from Zounds, right?
Zounds, 1990.
I didn't even know you had that record.
I don't even know how old Bill was at the time. He had to have been early 20s.
Yeah, he was pretty young. This isn't. It's not his first record, but it's one of the first. I'd say
it's earlier record.
Yeah, it might be his, I don't know, fourth record or something.
I got this record a little later, but it's earlier for sure.
Yeah, me too. It's very interesting, and we're gonna hear the title track, which is very short, and I don't know, the first Bill Stewart record I heard is What We Do, and I really liked it, and so when I heard this, it was just kind of like, wow, it took me a minute to realize how versatile Bill Stewart is. I think he's an incredibly versatile player.
I agree, yeah.
And I think that might be an aspect of his playing that people don't talk about that much. At least I don't hear them talk about it all that much. And he's all of the different kinds of music he plays at kind of the highest level, I would say, and that's impressive,
Yeah.
So this is very interesting.
So this is from the top of the track Zounds off the album Zounds by Lee Konitz. What a way to start a show, huh? What is that?
you know what impressed me about this was, I mean, he was a young man when he made that, and he's keeping some fast company, and he sounds like he totally belongs there. Everything he's making a meaningful contribution, and to be a young person, a young musician in that setting, I think that says a lot about his artistic maturity. To be able to make those kind of contributions in that setting at such a young age.
So many weird sounds.
Yeah, Kenny Werner's on it playing some synthesizer stuff.
Oh, that's what it was.
It's very interesting. So I figured that would be a real good way to start.
Is the whole record like that?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's not all just like that.
Yeah, it's not all like that.
No, but it's a weirder.
Yeah, it's definitely
Lee Konitz record.
It's not going to be on Casey Kasem's, top 40.
Interestingly, I didn't even realize this. My first pick was the following year, and it could not be more different. It is Maceo Parker.
Oh yeah,
Chicken.
This is a great record. Again, his versatility.
Kind of reinforces what you're saying. So this is Bill playing super funky, legit funk.
That's the same drummer.
It's so clean.
Did you hear this when it came out, or did you heard what we do first? You heard this later.
Yeah, much later.
How much later did you hear this?
Probably. Well, I was
Like
probably.
in the '90s still?
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 years later.
Okay.
When I got heavy into James Brown, I started digging into Maceo.
Yeah.
I was like, this can't be the same redheaded guy
Yeah,
playing
he's on a
drums.
couple of those records.
Yeah.
Yep.
So clean, so different. Bright crash cymbals, dead, punchy.
Yeah, the bass drum sounds is the obvious thing. If you hear Bill play, like you don't hear him play like a dead bass drum that often. He does occasionally, but not often.
Throck, what kind of kit was he playing on that record? Do you know?
I have no idea.
No
I mean,
idea,
there's a
okay.
chance I have no idea, but my guess is he could have had his own drums, but he could also been playing
The studio kit.
it's just a kit that was there. I mean,
Yeah.
like just hearing those toms
I know.
for a second, it sounds like Bill Stewart,
Yeah.
but it doesn't sound like the heads he would play.
No.
But
yeah.
it could just be, engineered a different way. So because it sounded like, I'm hearing it from kind of behind the speaker, but like I haven't listened to these records for a long time, but they almost sounded like double ply heads or something.
I know.
Like
I
I was
know.
like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But even when he started that groove to start the tune off, just the way he hits the hi-hat cymbals and the
Yep.
snare drum, like it sounds like Bill
Sounds
Stewart
like
still.
Bill. Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Great pick.
Yep, it's a good one. It's a good one. I don't know how he got involved in the Maceo world. I wish I'd.
I actually.
Go ahead.
Well, the story I heard was there was a great recording engineer named David Baker who passed away a number of years ago. I had the privilege of meeting him once. He was a wonderful guy and a really great engineer. He recorded all kinds of records, a lot of jazz and improvisational type music. But apparently, and I can't remember how this happened, but David Baker was talking with Maceo. I think it was Maceo himself, and Maceo was saying like, yeah, I'm looking for a new drummer, and David had recorded Bill once or twice and knew of him, and he said, there's a younger drummer who plays really well. You might like to hear him. I think he plays funk. He's a jazz drummer, but he plays funk. And Bill was playing at Augie's, which is now Smoke in New York City, the jazz club. And they went up to hear him play, and apparently the story I heard was Maceo heard him, and after a tune or two went, yeah, I like this guy. You know, that's the story I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a story. I just can't remember all the details.
Okay.
But I feel like it was something similar. Like
Yeah.
somebody recommended him. And
Yeah, that's the story I heard.
I wonder what the band was. Organ trio or something?
I mean, this would have been in the early '90s, so it could have been.
Yeah, I think in my mind I remember it being through like the Goldings Bernstein
It
trio.
totally
like,
could have
but
been.
I could
that.
be wrong.
No, I could be wrong too. That's what I heard though.
Yeah. And I remember in like early interviews with Bill, he would always mention these records, or he did like a thing on, it might have been like HBO or something with James Brown as well.
Really,
For
I
some
didn't
of
know
these
that.
guys, like I
Oh,
think
wow.
through Maceo or
Uh-huh.
Fred or some of those guys,
Yep.
they put him on this James shoot.
That's amazing. I didn't
So
know that.
and he would say in these interviews like, yeah, I want to mention that I played with James, like, because that's like it's,
Oh, man.
there's something to that.
All right, Tom, we got your second pick is Kevin Hayes,
Oh yeah.
El Matador. What year was this?
91, I think.
Same
is that
time,
Right? Is that right,
so-
Throck?
That sounds about right.
It
I
says
think-
91 in the
I don't know
title.
exactly.
I think it came out in 91, recorded in 90 or 91. I really like this record. This is a great
There's all those records on that. Was a Jazz
Jazz
City.
Yeah, there's
the
some
Jazz City
that's a
label.
hip little jazz label. If you're ever looking for some interesting stuff, there was a lot of great stuff that came out on Jazz City in the 80s and early 90s, and this is one of them. It's a great band. The great Joe Henderson is in the band. Steve Wilson, the alto player. It's really great. I chose this tune as the title track. I like how Bill plays with the band during the melody. We're going to hear we're going to hear from the top, I think, into the piano solo. So I love how he sounds on it.
And repeat, this was recorded exactly the same time as that Maceo record, it seems like.
Amazing.
Or
yeah.
shortly after.
Yeah, yep.
could go see him play tomorrow, and he would still kind of sound like that.
He does still sound like that.
Yeah,
No, it's
35 years
amazing.
later.
And the thing about that is, like, if you go back and listen to that there's a lot of twists and turns in that melody.
Yeah.
Like if you were sight reading that, it would be. I
you-
mean, you'd be in there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he makes it. First of all, he plays it so well. Like the way he's making. There's certain things that a drummer sort of has to do on a tune like that. He does it beautifully, and then the way he shades stuff and uses the dynamics, he makes it sound like. If you heard that as a drummer, you go, oh, "That's a nice tune," but if you sat down and tried to play with that, that would be kicking your butt.
Yeah,
You know?
I totally agree. Yeah.
But he makes it. It just sounds like, "Oh, I could do that. No problem." You know?
Yeah, I mean that's a common theme I think with some of this stuff
I think it's a huge
do
theme
on
in
these
this stuff.
these pods. Is like some people just make this stuff sound so easy.
It's
that
amazing.
it sounds like it's easy to do, and it's
Yep.
it's not easy to do.
All you got to do is sit down and try,
Yeah.
and you find out real quick. Wow.
And like the first thing I heard Bill on was the first Scofield record with Bill called Meant to Be, which I heard in '92. I was playing at an amusement park in Cincinnati for the summer, and there were some other musicians there that were older than me. I was 19 years old, and 18 or 19, and this guy lent me that CD, and I heard it, and I like within 20 seconds I remember just like thinking, who's playing drums? Who is this guy? I never heard of him, and I was just floored, you know. And then '93, What We Do came out. I got that, so I actually had that. I owned that record first, but I had heard Meant to Be. What I'm trying to get around to is, shortly after that, like I wanted to find everything I could find with this guy on it. Like I was like completely obsessed. And then there was a record store in Squirrel Hill.
Record
It was
Rubble.
called Record Rubble down in the basement on Forbes. And then later he moved upstairs.
It was off minor music.
Yeah, off minor music. He shared a space with the guy that had like a classical
That's right.
record store.
That's right.
But he would have all that Jazz City stuff.
He would
you
have
know.
all the small jazz labels that were in the 80s and 90s. It was
Yeah.
one of the only places in Pittsburgh where you could actually buy it at that
Yeah,
time.
not the nicest guy, but he could be nice at times. But anyway,
He was okay. Yeah.
Isn't that all record
odd
store?
taste. But anyway, you'd go in there and just find all this stuff. You'd be like, oh, like I found that Lee Konitz record there.
He had
or you
all
find all
kinda
that Jazz
great
City
stuff in
stuff.
there,
You know,
man.
all the crisscross stuff he would
Great
have.
stuff, yep.
You know, it's like wow.
Yep.
And then he would do special orders, but if you didn't have every detail, he would like give you a hard time for not knowing like every single detail about it.
That's true.
Anyway,
That is true.
but so yeah, discovering all those Jazz City records, you know,
Yeah.
Bill's first solo record is on
Yep,
that, and
that's right.
that's Kevin Hayes stuff.
Yep.
It was like this whole new pile of CDs that like I could check out with Bill, like around that same early '90s period, you
Yeah.
know. So, yeah,
Well, we're going to go to the Scofield record. John Scofield Quartet, What We Do, Why Nogales?
are you asking me?
Yeah. Why? The song is called Why Nogales.
You know, I've always wondered if that was a nod to Mingus, because Mingus was from Nogales. That's where he was
Okay.
from, but he grew up in L.A. If you see Sco, ask him.
Yeah, it's weird, man. Like this record, like I mean, to this day, like
This is my favorite.
If I could own like 20 albums, this would be one of them.
This is
You know,
definitely
I love
my
this record.
it's my favorite Bill Stewart record, and there's a lot of really good ones. I think this is my favorite because this was the first one that,
Yeah.
that I heard.
We've never talked about it, but it's my favorite too.
Yeah.
It might be, I guess, maybe it's his best record. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
of that era.
I'm sure he would argue about that because he's, you
Yeah,
know, 30
yeah.
some years have passed.
Which is crazy.
But it's ridiculous.
It's a great record, man.
And every tune's ridiculous. This one's a little freer.
I was wondering which tune you were going to choose.
Yeah, I could have picked anything.
I know.
But so let's just listen to it.
No,
and
it's great.
See what happens.
Did you want to play it from the top? I don't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's you, Tom.
Sorry.
All right, so this is from the top. Why Nogales? This is again 1992. We're kind of.
This came out in '93.
Did it?
It was recorded in 92, I think.
I'm not sure, but I just know it came out in '93.
All still-
What does it Camelot Music?
Wow.
South Hills Village.
Robinson
Still
Town.
very early in his career. This must be within 2 or 3 years of him even arriving on the scene. So, here we go. Wow. So good.
Ridiculous.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. I mean,
It's just
for me at the time, hearing the whole record, I was just blown away by the drumming, obviously. And I was a big Sco fan already. I was just kind of becoming a Lovano fan, the saxophonist. And it's kind of like what you said earlier about that Lee Konitz record. It's like, how does somebody tackle a tune like that? You know, there's such clarity in everything he plays. The sound is ridiculous. Like, that bass drum sound couldn't sound any better.
Well,
I mean, not to mention, like,
everything
his
else.
cymbals in that era. To me, it's like as good as cymbals can sound.
Well, I
you
mean,
know?
we were talking about this on the phone the other night. When I first heard this record, I heard it right after it came out. Our mutual friend, Paul Wells, the drummer who lives in New York, he brought this CD to my house, and I remember listening to it in my bedroom with him. And I didn't know who any of these musicians were at the time. And I remember just the sound of the drums is what really knocked me out. You know, it was just everything sounded great. And of course, everything he was playing was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? You know, I think I was like 14 or 15 when I heard this. Yeah. And it was just kind of like, wow, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the record is much more swinging and in time and
Which I think your next pick is.
But
the
it's
same record.
you have one off of the same record.
Yeah, Little Walk, which
Let's hear
is
that.
the
We'll
first.
talk about
This
that
was
too.
this is the first tune on that record, and again, like Throg said, you know, I could pick anything from this. I chose this one just because it's great to sort of hear Bill play in that slower tempo. Mm-hmm. You can really hear how beautiful his cymbal beat is, in his phrasing and his sound. All of that stuff really comes out at slower tempos, most of the time. That's kind of why I chose it, but it's great.
So what is this excerpt? You've got 2:45 into the track.
Yeah, I just kind of, I could have picked almost anything, but this is, I like this little section, so no specific reason why.
All right. This is from the same record.
Yep, it's the first tune.
to learn from that. The way he gets his little delays with the hi-hat. That's on the left foot.
Again, like the artistic maturity, that a tune like that for a drummer, it could be very easy to kind of overplay, like play a lot of stuff. But his choices artistically, I think, are really great.
Yeah, it's a hard tempo too.
That's what I'm saying.
And I love those tempos personally, but they can be, like you said about navigating that melody on the other tune. Like just a tempo like this can kick your butt.
It will.
It's going to be tendency. You could rush or drag.
Yes.
But I mean, his thing is so clear. I think another thing I meant to say earlier when I was talking about this record, on the last tune. So when this would have come out, I was around, approaching 20 years old or around 20 years old. Excuse me. And, I grew up hearing all this funk music and pop music and fusion music and some jazz music as well. And I was probably already really into some of Miles's groups, some of Coltrane's bands and other stuff. A little bit of Ornette's music. And I could hear a lot of this stuff in this band.
100%.
Like the way that Joe and Sco play together, it kind of reminds
Absolutely.
you in ways of like Don Cherry and
Yep.
and Ornette. It reminds you of Wayne and Miles.
They had a great musical relationship.
And they still do. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
the way they play together. It's like tight and loose. And another thing is like, I still feel this way about this record all these years later, and all these musicians, I should say, is like whether it's Bill Stewart or Sco or Lovano, you hear like 3 notes, and you know exactly who these guys are.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's a quality that always attracts me to any player.
100%. Yeah.
And that's not easy to do either.
It's incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
We should also mention the late, great Dennis Irwin,
Oh,
who
man, he's
sounds
killing
so
it.
great on it.
Yeah,
What a
and-
wonderful bassist.
Yeah.
I got to hit Bill's drums once. I was setting up at a festival. Like, let me just see if they really sound as good as they.
Were they backline drums or his drums?
They were his. It was his
Yeah.
Gretsch kit with the clear front head and everything. They were tuned so high.
Really high, yeah.
And the snare drum, the wires were like so tight, like there was barely any snare sound. I'm like, how the heck does this guy make these things sound good? It was like doing, doing, doing.
He played in Washington, PA, where I grew up in the early 2000s. He was playing with Chris Potter's quartet, and they borrowed a drum set from me for Bill to play. And I remember when I got the drums back, I couldn't believe how high the 12-inch tone was tuned.
Really?
Like it felt like I was hitting this table.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, he's tuning that high.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I also heard the kit fell over on the stage. I wasn't at the show. I had a gig.
How does it fall
I
over?
think something happened with the spur. Maybe it just fell over. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, and his tuning, to my ears, has gotten higher over the years.
Yeah.
He was tuning a little lower back at this period, which I tend to like a little bit. I think
The drums on this record sound
sound so good.
so
Yeah.
great. So good.
yeah.
Just shows, it's the jockey, not the horse.
Yeah. It's got the touch, that clarity. Everyone's been chasing that cymbal sound ever since this
Totally.
record came out.
And it's weird, like his cymbals that he's designed, they have a bit of that, but they're different.
Yeah.
But he still sounds. The playing is like he sounds the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
There's always some new little ideas and twists and turns, but I mean,
Yeah.
he was pretty much developed when he came on the scene in his
Yeah.
20s.
We're going to go forward 4 years to 1996. Larry Golding's Big Stuff. Subtle Digs. It's one of your picks. Why'd you pick this one?
Yeah, it's kind of like some of the stuff Tom was saying about that Kevin Hayes track. Just the way he navigates this melody and the way he catches things, plays through stuff. Just
Is this the trio? Is this a trio?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is with
Peter
Peter
and
Bernstein on
Larry
guitar.
Bernstein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Totally different cymbal sound, but the same touch.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the same cymbals.
Yeah, just sounds smoother.
You know, the mix is different for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely recorded differently than the other one. You know, one of the things about his playing that is great is, at least in my opinion, is that you hear, at least I can hear so many different influences in his playing, and it's amazing how they all sort of fit into his style. You know, there's sometimes you hear a little bit of this influence, other times you hear a little bit of that, and the way that he utilizes all of it, you know, is really it's really something, you know.
Yeah, he's something else, man.
I think Bill is the drummer who led me to Roy Haynes.
Yeah,
That's
he
interesting.
loves Roy. I
Yeah,
mean,
he mentioned him
talks
a
about it all the
bunch,
time.
and then all of a sudden,
He learned a lot from Eddie Blackwell too. There's
Yeah.
definitely that.
I mean, I think the primary stuff I always read him talk about or heard him talk about. I mean, there's obviously a ton of influences, but there's Roy, Tony, Jack, Elvin.
Yeah.
You know. And you definitely hear it. You can hear the Roy stuff. You can hear the Tony stuff for sure. Some of the Elvin stuff, you know. I know our friend Paul Wells. We've talked. He and I have probably spent months of our lives talking to each other about Bill Stewart, and I'm not exaggerating.
does Bill know this?
I remember Paul telling me he read something. I don't know if I ever read it, if I just heard it from him, like just talking about the sound he was going for with the cymbals, especially back then. You know, he would talk about Tony's cymbals, you know, which everybody talks about, the classic Tony, like K sound.
Small kid Tony.
And Jack's cymbals.
Yeah.
Like in that era, like with
Mid-late 60s?
No, like later, like kind of like Keith stuff, like that, like drier.
Oh,
thing.
wow. Oh,
And
yeah,
you-
that
and
makes
if you think
sense.
about it, like that trashy shoulder crash he gets, and it has
That's
some
true.
of that
Yeah.
Tony thing, but it also has that definition and
Yeah.
and kind of stick of Jack's
That's
thing.
true. I never
Now,
thought of that.
again, Bill could walk in and tell me I'm full of crap. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's something I've heard, and it does
Yeah.
make sense because I know
Yeah,
those
yeah.
are influences. But it's such a great sound,
It is,
you know.
for sure.
Our seventh reason to love Bill Stewart is Bill Carrothers off minor duets.
Oh, man, yeah.
Did you chose this one?
Yeah, this is from 99, I believe, 1999. They played a fair amount together. Bill Carrothers is a very wonderful pianist, and this is a duo record they made, just piano and drums, which that's a challenging situation to play in, and they do it really beautifully. I chose this one. We're going to sort of hear the end of the tune, and I love their interaction, and again, the sound he gets is really amazing. So.
Here we go. We're at 4:05 into the track. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Acoustic piano and drum
you know,
set.
any of that monk music is such great vehicles to play on.
They really are. And again, you know, he's sort of, when you heard the melody out, you know, he's doing the job of a drummer. He's sort of playing the time. He's playing, but he's also the interaction and the way he's decorating the melody with Bill is just, it's really something. You know, it's I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, killing.
Did you guys catch the Blue Note, or was it the Vanguard? What was it? It was like a solo drum night during the pandemic.
I didn't see that.
Did you see that?
No, I don't think so.
Anybody see that? I think it was the Vanguard.
It was the Vanguard.
They were doing
did
live
these
streams during the pandemic.
mostly
Oh!
solo performances.
I
Solo
remember-
performances.
I remember that. I didn't see it, though.
It was like $10. They never released it after the fact. You had to
Yeah.
watch it live.
One and done.
One and his was perfection. 45 minutes straight of like, what is happening?
Man, I wish I would have seen
But they
that.
never put it back out.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that. It was just so
Yeah.
mature and beautiful.
Yeah.
Wish they put them out because they did a bunch. There was a whole
Yeah.
bunch of
I know
them.
Marcus,
I do
Marcus
remember
did one of
those.
those.
Yeah.
Like a solo drum
Marcus
thing.
Gilmore.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, hopefully they put it out. If you're listening.
What's up next?
Number 8 is my second pick, the Pat Metheny Trio from the album Trio 99 2000.
Oh, yeah.
The track Go Get It. I saw this band on this tour, and to me, this was a little bit of a different Bill Stewart experience. It was more like how he can play so fast and so relaxed and leave so much space.
Did you see him in New York?
Yeah.
Did you see him at the Knitting Factory?
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you there?
No. I think that's where the live record.
I think
Might
it was
be
the
from-
Knitting Factory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
The old Knitting Factory downtown.
Yeah, the old one,
There's
yeah.
a double live CD of this band. I think it's from some of the Knitting Factory shows.
Yeah,
I could be
unreal.
wrong. You know, there's a 75% chance I'm right about it.
I saw them twice, and they played IAJE or something
Oh, wow.
the following year. But so we're going to go to, make sure it's muted and we get our YouTube ads. This is where he's trading at an insanely fast tempo, and it just put him at another echelon for me. All right, while I'm queuing it up, this is 3 minutes and 55 seconds into the tune. I don't remember the form, but we'll figure it out. The end of the bass solo. Unreal. He never drops a beat. Never even close to dropping a beat. I feel like he's playing like more aggressively during this time period. It's just something that changed and
The tuning's a little higher for sure. You can hear like that 12-inch tom was cranked.
way
Yeah,
up there.
I'm not wild about the drum sound. It's not
Yeah.
bad, but
Yeah.
it's not my favorite.
It's
He sounds amazing, of course, but
Yeah.
just the recorded.
You hear that, Bill? You don't like your drum sound.
It's not his fault.
All right, we have two more for this episode. We're going back to the John Scofield Trio, live en route.
Oh, yeah.
Hammock Soliloquy from 2004. Who picked this one? That's yours?
I did, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Picked the wrong one.
there's so many darn records he's made with Sco. And, you know, sometimes this band would play these, like, kind of nasty, swampy, New Orleans-y kind of grooves, which Bill sounds amazing on. This is a fun little tune. It's, again, like a challenging tune to navigate from different time feels and time signatures. So it's just cool to hear him. You know, and Sco plays this stuff so great. He writes such great tunes. I think that's the thing that, like, I've come to realize about loving Scofield's music so much. His tunes are just killing, you know. Anyway.
This is a live recording, right?
Yeah, it's from the Blue Note.
There we go. From the top. Man, I forgot how rowdy he's gotten with this band. That's pretty rowdy.
Yeah.
I think, I've said in the beginning, I heard that he practiced time for an hour, metronome on, turn it off, come back an hour later and see how far off you are. I think that practice has freed him up to do all that crazy stuff. Like, his time is just relentless. Even when they're not playing in time, I feel like there's still this, like, he's in control of everything.
Yeah, he definitely knows what he's doing.
That's just my 2 cents. Try playing to a metronome for an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I never heard that story, but I mean, who knows if it's true or not. But I mean, he's obviously put a lot of time in.
Yeah.
Well, you can definitely hear. I mean, he has such a great inner clock when he plays. So anything that's going to change, I mean, he has that inner strength time-wise to be able to deal with that and to be creative around it, you know. And that's it's one thing to have good time, but to have, you know, time that's so good that you can manipulate it however you want.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna, you know.
That's what I mean. It's like it gave him more freedom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think
right.
too, like we can't like underestimate like these guys have played together a lot. Like,
Yes.
like John and Bill, they've played together so much. So I'm sure John's sometimes thinking about Bill when he's writing and like knowing who's gonna
Totally
play this music well and how they're gonna deal with it. And he knows what he can get away with and what he can do, what he can't do. You know, I mean, and just that, like we talked about it 3 times now on 3 different tunes, like just the way he orchestrates like his parts around these songs and the melodies and the stuff he chooses to play, like the unison stuff versus, just how loosely and cleanly he can play through this stuff.
What he does and what he doesn't do.
Yeah.
It's
really amazing. And there's always this sense of space I can feel with this playing.
100%.
Even though he can be really active.
Yeah.
It's
amazing how great all these different grooves feel when he plays them. There's, certain drummers, there's certain things that are really like in their wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And then other stuff is good, but it seems like with him, it's like everything, he makes it feel perfect, which is a wonderful thing.
We're going to wrap it up with a brand new record. Bill Stewart Trio live at the Village Vanguard. Mina. That was your pick.
This is just coming out, like, as we speak, this record, like, over the last couple of weeks or something. He put out a studio record with this trio, that's amazing.
I get YouTube ads, so.
So they made this record called Band Menu a few years ago, and that band's been working live a bit with Walter Smith on saxophone and Larry Grenadier, who's been on a bunch of Bill's records, including his early Blue Note records. This tune is a tune that was on his second Blue Note record from the 90s, this tune Mina. It's also on this live trio record from the Vanguard, which just came out.
Cool. Let's check it out. I was listening to this yesterday when you sent it. I was inspired by the composition. It's a bass line and a little melody. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yep.
It's like, I need to write music,
Yeah, and like, check out the other versions on the 90s on Telepathy.
Yeah.
You get to hear like play with a quintet, so it's he's a great writer. That's something we should talk about too. And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to include something from one of his solo records. Like, he writes really great tunes.
He does, yeah,
and
that's
some of them
true.
are like, a lot of them are ballads, like really nice ballads.
Yeah. I was going to choose something off of Snide Remarks, and I ended up choosing something else. But
it was hard, like you said, it was hard to pick.
Hard,
there's just so much,
there's a lot,
so much great output. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
That's 10 reasons. Anyone have any recommendations that we should check out and add to the list? They'll give you enough to listen to, for sure.
My guess is I have them all.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode. That's it for this week's episode. Please like, share, subscribe. If you have any questions or requests for the show, email me at drumcandypodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.